of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Let the record show that all members of the City Council are present. There is a copy of the Open Meetings Act posted on the west wall and is accessible to the public at any time during the course of this meeting. Next item on the agenda, item 2, is the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests. First item is item A, approve agenda as submitted. Item B, receive and place on file all notices pertaining to this meeting. Item C, receive and place on file all materials having any bearing on this meeting. Item D, approval of minutes of regular meeting on February 1st, 2016 as on file in the city clerk's office. Item E, approval of treasurer's report of claims. E1, approval of Main Street Beatrice claim in the amount of $1,172.50. E2, approval of the balance of the treasurer's report of claims in the amount of $283,947.20. Item F, approval of Boswell report of claims in the amount of $46,192.75. Item G, approval of manager application for Paula C. Delaney, license number C-32873, in connection with the American Legion bidding Norman 27 Post DBA American Legion 27, located at 701 Dorsey Street, Beatrice, Nebraska. Item H, approval to sell property valued in excess of $10,000 for a used compost screener with an estimated value of $20,000, as recommended by the Board of Public Works. Item I, resolution number 5872, repealing resolutions which are no longer of use or contrary to the current city practices. Item J, resolution number 5873, appointing Robert Moreau as Chief Building Inspector for the City of Beatrice, Nebraska. Item K, resolution number 5874, entering into a farm lease with Larry Delabar for pasture to the southwest of the current city landfill. And item L, resolution number 5875, entering into a farm lease with Justin M. Wiegand for property adjacent to the city landfill. Mr. Catlin? Oh, any item that any council member wants removed from the agenda?
H is in Henry.
Item H. Mr. Claybaugh?
I will abstain on E1.
Okay. Anyone from the public? Mr. Catlin?
Mayor, I move that all the items listed under the consent agenda, with the exception of item H, be approved, accepted, and are ratified as presented.
Second.
Been moved by Catlin, seconded by Cook, that all items under the consent agenda, with the exceptions of item H, be approved. Your vote, please. That is approved 8-0.
Mayor, I move that item H, approval to sell property value in excess of $10,000 for a used compost screener with an estimated value of $20,000, as recommended by the Board of Public Works, be approved, accepted, and are ratified as presented.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Morgan, that approval to sell property valued in excess of $10,000 be discussed. Further discussion on the item? Mr. Fairbanks?
I don't, excuse me, I don't have a problem with it. I just had someone ask me about it, and so I need to have, and I read it, but I want to make sure that I understand it, so when I go to explain it to them, I have all the nuts and bolts. So can you give me the Cliff Notes version of it?
Sure. This is a compost screener that the city purchased, or WPC purchased, I believe, in 1990. We've been using it out there. You mix all the compost together, they screen it out. This way they keep all the clunky stuff out, and you just get nice, clean compost at the end. It was time to replace it. We purchased a new one with part of the budget. A new one's supposed to be delivered here in the next couple of weeks. We had this excess piece of machinery to sell. Our city code states if anything in excess of $10,000, we have to bring to city council, essentially have you declare it as excess property, then sell it. When we talked to the vendor, he thought that the old machine would be worth about $20,000. We purchased it for $19,000. I said, almost 20 years ago by now. And so that's why we have it before you tonight, is to bring it back, make sure you guys approve us selling the old compost screener.
Okay, but it wasn't traded in, we're actually selling it.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's what I needed to know. I need to know when we bought it, roughly what we paid for it, and I thought, was my understanding, as I read through, I thought we were trading it in, but we're selling it out.
We're selling it outright.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Do we have a potential buyer for it?
The gentleman who is handling the purchase of our new one, that same company also handles sale of old ones. They have a website. They have some people who are interested in it. They'll post it on there and see what interest they draw in our used machine.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience? All right, your vote, please. That is approved 8-0. Next item on the agenda, there are no public hearings. Item 4, resolutions. Resolution number 5876, amending the previously adopted formal policy concerning the expenditures authorized by the Local Government Miscellaneous Expenditure Act.
Mayor, I move that resolution number 5876 be passed and adopted.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Claybaugh, that resolution number 5876 be passed and adopted.
As part of our ongoing review of current city resolutions and city codes that are out there, this is one that we found. As we read through it, we noticed that it needs to be updated. Part of it, as I mentioned in your memo in there, it referenced attendance at the National League of Cities National Conference. The city has not been a member of this for well over 10 years, so we removed that. In addition, it had some dollar amounts listed in there as far as gifts or rewards upon retirement from the city for a number of years of service. Those had not been updated since 1995, and so we just simply updated those based upon inflation.
Questions? Anyone? From the public? All right, gentlemen, your vote, please. That is approved 8-0. Resolution number 5876 has been approved. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance adding Article 12 and Sections 7-370 through 7-381 to the Beatrice City Code regarding adjoining buildings.
Mayor, I move the said ordinance be given number 16-005. The title therefore be approved, and said ordinance be read by number only the first time tonight.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Bilsbach, that ordinance 16-005 be read by title only the first time tonight. Discussion.
Just kind of a brief overview. We have some people in the public who maybe have been at previous meetings or watching TV. This is the adjoining building ordinance. It deals with commercial properties. In commercial properties and adjoining buildings are both defined in here. Some of the main things about the adjoining ordinance is that, one, it would require the property owners to acquire and retain insurance. Then it has to be there after the registration. There's no fee for the registration for adjoining. There has to be an inspection. The inspection will be done by the building inspection department. It's an annual inspection unless there are no errors found in your building. Then we go to every 3 years is what we had talked about. And again, what we talked about before was that when the building inspection goes in there on an adjoining building, they'll be looking for structural issues. Foundations, walls, floors, joists, ceilings, roofs, those types of things is what's written in here. So that is the adjoining one. If you'll notice that we've set it to go into force on July 5th, 2016, because again, we're going to read this at 3 separate meetings, and so it has to pass each one of those 3 meetings in order to go into effect, and then it won't go into effect until July 5th to give us an opportunity to make sure that we get the information out to everyone.
Thank you. Discussion from any of the members of the City Council? From the public? Come on up. If you'd state your name and address, please, that'd be great.
I'm Nick Jurgens,
You can sit down if you like, Nick.
and my building is 400 Court Street, is where I have my building. I've talked to a lot of people downtown who I don't think they're opposed to something happening, but they kind of think this might be too excessive. I mean, this is all pretty much based, and we know it's from the building that had problems, but there were pre-existing, I mean, it wasn't paid for in taxes for, I believe, a couple of years, if I'm correct. Kind of signs to show that there was problems there, but I mean, insurance, I understand that. I mean, I think we should all have insurance. I have the $1 million worth of insurance stated in your sheet already. That might be excessive for some people because, I mean, $1 million liability could buy every building down my block if I knocked them all down. But I mean, I think something needs to be done. There's a lot of people that couldn't be here tonight that'll be at the next meeting, and they're more upset to the fact that if they pass, they really plan on taking, legal action. They're going to fight it, and I don't want to see it come to that.
Do you have any suggestions, Nick, on how we could modify this, change it?
My biggest problem is we're dealing with old buildings. We all know that. The insurance is a great idea. I think, nobody can say that it's a guaranteed that when you send in an inspector that it's going to be just for structural. I mean, when I've talked to people about this matter, if he walks in and sees other things, you said you'd be liable for it. So if he doesn't like, old wiring, is that going to be an issue? Is that going to play into factor? Or is it just structural?
I believe the ordinance calls for, what they'll go in and look for are structural things. Now, as we stated before, while walking through and looking at those structural items, if he sees something else that's clearly a violation of the code, yeah, he can't close his eyes to those things. I mean, once we know what we know, we can't turn the blind eye to it. He's then going to have to bring that to your attention and have it corrected.
And that's where the problem is when we're dealing with these old buildings. I mean, once he's in there, I've dealt with inspectors before. It's never pleasant. I mean, even when you're adding an addition to your house, I mean, it's never going to be an enjoyable thing. But when you're sending them into an old building like that, you just never know what's going to happen at that point. I think that's where everybody's problem is. We're not dealing with new houses, brand new buildings that are getting an inspection. We're dealing with things that are old. I mean, there's going to be things he sees no matter what, besides structural, in probably everything. And like you said, he can't turn his eye from it. So that's where my problem is. I'm all for insurance. I think everybody needs that. I mean, if even a building that's being used by somebody has a brick fall off of it, it needs to be covered. But that's I think mine and everybody's problem at that point. And, make us have insurance, check us every year. I mean, at least then it's covered as far as something happening at that point is kind of where I'm at.
Questions of Nick? Dwight?
Just off the top of your head, do you know what your policy might cost you a month or a year?
When I looked at your sheet that said you needed $1 million worth of insurance for liability, I just, for the heck of it, I called to see what it cost because I had $300,000. It was like, I think it was like $3 more a month for me to have that. So I was like, I just did it. I'm like, well, do it. I go, if it's that cheap, there's no sense in not having it. But I want to say, I think I'm right at about $1,600 a year for what I pay for. So, and it would cover pretty much anything that, hit my store, even to rebuild. So.
Any other questions? Anybody?
Stan,
Yes.
do you realize why we're doing this or why we brought it up, Nick?
Oh, I understand. I mean, I understand if Al's building next to me falls down, it would be a bad thing. But at the same time, I know he has insurance, so I'm not worried. I know he does updates to his building to keep that from happening. I feel to a point that the problem where this is arising is from the one building that has had issues. And I know there's other ones downtown that are a problem, but I mean, there's lots of people like me who, I mean, I spent a lot of money last summer repainting, doing stuff to the roof. I haven't got the back corner of my building done because I'm saving to finish that last part because it needed more than just paint, you know. So there's a lot of people that do that though. And I really think, you know, like I said, putting an inspector in, it could close a lot of doors. It really could.
Well, actually, this wasn't from 407 court. We've had this on the back burner for 15, 20 years.
And
We've begged, we've pleaded, and when we went into this, actually it was with the context of protecting not only the adjoining building owners, because yes, that 407 put the two buildings next to it in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. Plus the fact of protecting the taxpayer, because it's 200. You said $1 million. It's going to cost somebody about $200,000 to remove that building down there, and I'm assuming that it's probably going to be thrown back onto the city. And that, you know, the two building owners next to 407, they did not let the building fall into disrepair, and neither did the taxpayers. But somebody's going to have to pick up the bill for $200,000 to shore up the other buildings. And so when we went into this, it was with the aspect of protecting the adjoining buildings and the taxpayers. And we've thrown this thing around for years. Maybe you're correct. Maybe in our zeal to get this done, maybe we did overreach a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we did bring building owners in. We asked them questions. You should have seen the first draft. It would have made your skin crawl. But we have watered it down, toned it down to where we thought, you know, it could be. But that's what the whole thing was brought up to. We want to protect you guys plus the taxpayers.
And I understand that, but like I said, I mean, if he would have had insurance, we wouldn't even have this issue right now.
I agree.
And you know, I think that's a good idea. But like I said, 120-year-old buildings plus, it's, you know, if you even a house, if you let an inspector into a 120-year-old house, they're going to tear that thing apart inch by inch. I mean, you can't walk through a building and not see something that's going to be an issue to him.
Well, and I'm not going to disagree with you with that, and because you are a responsible building owner. Mm-hmm. You can tell it by looking at what you've done in the last 2 years to your building. And we have a lot of responsible building owners downtown, but we have a lot of irresponsible building owners downtown too.
I do agree.
And you know, they don't go up on their roofs, and if we send a building inspector in and they happen to see a small problem with the roof, it might cost the building owner $2,000-$3,000 to get it fixed. But if we don't do something, and I don't know what to do, Nick. I've been on this for 15 years.
Yeah.
But if we don't get an identified on that thing could go worse, and it could cost the building owner tens of thousands of dollars to fix it.
And I agree with that, but you also have to agree with when you have insurance, they're not going to insure a building unless it's insurable. I mean, if they go to my house and my shingles look horrible, they're going to make me put a roof on that before I get insurance. So, I mean, at that point, you're going to know if there's an issue with that building. If they can't get insurance, there's a problem right there.
Then would you guys have a problem if they couldn't get it insured? Would you guys have a problem with an inspector going in then?
Oh, if it can't be insured, then you know there's obviously a problem. I think at that point, it would probably be worth having somebody go into it, but there needs to be, you know, reason to go into it. I mean, you know, if I have insurance, that they gave me insurance because they know my building's not going to fall down on them, because they're not going to give me insurance to replace that building if it's a pile of junk. I mean, I'll use my mother-in-law's house as an example. They wouldn't insure her house until she put shingles on it. Same with my building. If they went into that thing and were like, oh, this thing's going to fall down in a year, we're not going to give him, you know, $1 million of liability or insurance at all. They would make me fix what was wrong before they would hand that over.
Well, I'll be honest with you, that's a twist that we didn't think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Any other comments? Yes,
And
Ted?
the only comment I'd like to make is this isn't just pertains to downtown, it's for the entire.
Yeah, the whole town, yeah.
With the conversation that's been going on here tonight and what Rich said, we got to do something with the buildings downtown. We have to do something with the buildings in the whole community.
Yeah.
This isn't just
I
downtown.
misspoke on that, Ted.
No,
I did.
I'm just making sure everybody out there understands. We know.
Yeah, I mistook, I misspoke on that.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anybody else? Lyle, come on up. State your name and address, if you would, please.
Lyle Jurgens, 1618 North 13th Street, Beatrice. I just had a couple questions, like what do you mean by commercial building with more than 50% of its floor space used for commercial activity?
Counselor?
Well, we defined a commercial activity in there as meaning having the objective of supplying commodities, goods, or services and ancillary business functions. So,
Well, it says, it's just a short paragraph here. It says, commercial building means a building with more than 50% of its floor space used for commercial. So if you have a 150-foot building and you use 40%, do you still consider that a commercial building?
it wouldn't meet the standard. No,
So, in other words, that building wouldn't be inspected.
no.
Okay, that's what I want. And then also, I'm kind of, like Nicholas, you're kind of opening a can of worms because there's a lot of empty buildings in this town. And there's a lot of people that let them run down, and a lot of them probably will be at the next meetings. But I kind of agree with Nick that, you're kind of opening a can of worms here and you're going to make a lot of people really mad. And like I said, like he said, if you have insurance, it solves the problem. But, like your water main broke underneath our front store, flooded our whole basement, and yet the city wouldn't even talk to me about covering the claim. I had to go through our State Farm Insurance Company to pay for all the damages because you guys said, nope, we're not even going to look at it. So, if you want to take responsibility, that might be something you might think about, like the corner of our building that was damaged by the Board of Public Works when they hit it with the backhoe. Might be something he brings up when he inspects it, but what are you going to do if everybody decides to stick together and not let you in their businesses? If they all attorney up and say, okay, we're not going to let you in your business, our businesses, or we're going to tell our renters that you're not coming in. What would you do if that was the case? Will you take everybody to court? Is everybody going to go to jail for 6 months like you got in here?
The ordinance has to be passed first, Lyle.
Yeah, but I mean, I was just kind of curious. Would you?
And we're giving everyone plenty of time to voice their opinion as to what is going on, as opposed to passing it all tonight. Okay? So we're going to do this over a 3-meeting period, okay? Just to get different ideas. What we're looking for is some constructive ideas, not the what-ifs,
Yeah.
okay? So if there's something in there that you feel is not germane or is something that you've got a suggestion on how we could better improve what we're trying to put together here, that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for, are they going to throw me in jail? Are they going to look at this and shut the doors? That's not what we're here for. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to come to some consensus as to how we can safeguard Nick's building and his neighbor's building, because it is a problem. Insurance just isn't going to cover this, okay? If his neighbor's building falls down and it damages his building, he says, well, I've got insurance. Well, he may have insurance, but that could create another hole in our downtown district, and it could damage his building to beyond repair also. So, I think that's what we're looking for, is something very constructive.
Okay, well, I kind of agree what you're doing, but I think maybe it's just a little bit excessive. I don't know, the way I've heard that this was written up by some other city that used it, and you kind of copied somebody else's ordinance.
There's other communities
Yeah,
that have
that do this.
ordinances on the books that do this today.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of recreating the wheel, we took bits and pieces just to see if we could formulate it while we were talking to other property owners.
So how did that work in the other cities? Were they Did they have problems with it when they started doing this?
I don't know that they had any problems at Nebraska City.
Nebraska City just has a vacant building ordinance. They do not have an adjoining
Okay.
building ordinance.
Are we the only ones that are doing the adjoining building ordinance, or is somebody else doing that also?
Yes, Greg, I don't remember if you remember seeing any others.
I've seen them in other jurisdictions outside of the state. A number of other cities and other states have them. Similar with the vacant one. For instance, Emporia, Kansas has a vacant one. There's a number of other ones. Because we try to look as many as we could and put them in front of as many people as possible to get different ideas, to see what they thought might work, might not work, get the feedback that both you and Nick have provided here tonight. And so we tried to get as many as we could so we could see ideas that we liked, ideas that we didn't like, that we thought would be, that just wouldn't work and be functional. And so throughout the process of it, this is what has been created. So
So it'll be interesting to see when you put this through, if it goes through, what the other cities will follow and try to do the same thing on it.
Well,
You know,
there's
since
lots
nobody does
of,
it.
there's lots of other municipalities that have vacant building ordinances where there's
Like-
lots of them. If you just Google vacant building, they're just all over.
Vacant building. You're talking
Vacant building
vacant.
ordinances, and yeah, there's lots of them. And I think something that you might be missing is that we that own buildings downtown, this is a way for us to hopefully maintain our investment in our buildings, that have other people keep their buildings up. Because right now, our buildings are going down in value, even though we're keeping our building up, you're keeping your building up. Other people aren't. So your value of your buildings are going down because of other building owners. So this is to help protect your investment too.
Is it going to be hard to enforce this with people from out of state, like in California, or how do you go about trying to get a hold of everybody that owns buildings? There's a lot of people that,
one of the things that's stated in it, Lyle, is that if you are an out-of-state owner or you don't live within a certain proximity of the city, you're required to have a resident agent, somebody that lives within
I see.
the city or that can be of assist. If we have an emergency, we won't be able to contact somebody that can come right on site and help communicate with the property owner that knows the property owner's wishes and things like that. Because that is a big problem. It's very hard to deal with some out-of-state property owners, especially on buildings where there's no tenant, there's nobody leasing, there's nobody renting, and it's hard to get a hold of them. So
so if you have a leaking building like Edward D. Jones, he says everybody has flat roofs and everybody has problems with a little bit of leaking. There may not be a lot of water. If we got 2x12s up in ours every foot. So if you happen to see something that was leaking, is that something you're going to make you spend $40,000 to coat that building? We just spent $8,000 to recoat our building, Ron Belding. And if you still have leaks and can't figure out where it's coming from, is that something your inspector is going to say, well, are you going to we're going to condemn that until you fix it, or what? Or does it have to look like it's completely rotted and falling in?
that's up to the determination of the building inspector of what's going to be structurally an issue
Right.
that's going to.
Rich?
Another thing, Lyle, we had some other building owners at those committee meetings, and one thing I always stressed was, is this thing perfect? No, it's not. But we had to start somewhere, guys. And if we run into something that's a problem with us, you guys can bring it to us. We can always go in and change. I mean, this thing is not perfect. I'm going to give you that. But we had to start somewhere. And like I said, if it's runs into a problem with us, we can always come in, have more discussions, and we can change it.
All right.
This is not set in stone.
I think that's all I got. And like I said, I just think you're kind of creating a little bit of fear in people, because once you start letting that happen, you're going to have kind of
And that
people
was
get
never
paranoid.
that was never our intent.
All right.
That was never our intent.
All right, well, that's all I have.
And if they if they throw you in jail, I'll come down.
Thanks, Lyle.
All right, thanks.
Ed?
Well, and I don't mean to address you directly, Lyle, I just want you to understand that a lot of these ordinances and the other communities that we've looked at, a lot of these have been in place for 20-plus years, and they have improved the communities that was their intent, that's our intent. Like Rick said, to improve the value of your property. And the other thing is this isn't as strict as some. It didn't go.
This is watered down version of a whole bunch of them.
Remember,
Yeah,
this
there's
is a small town, your downtown businesses keep you going, so
Yep.
you bring a lot of
Yeah,
customers.
but I
down
just
there.
want to let you know that once again, it's not just the downtown, it's the entire community. And that this isn't, it could have been, what I'm saying is that it probably could have been or should have been, could have been a lot worse. I mean, we could have been a lot more heavy-handed, and it's simply not. So we're just trying to improve. The whole idea of the ordinance is to improve the look of abandoned or, empty buildings, make sure that they meet public safety issues. So it isn't just the business owners in the area, but everyone that owns property in the community. So, as commercial properties go, so do residential properties go. So,
Well, most people really don't know what the ordinance is yet, so it'll be
Right.
interesting when people find out what's actually in it, how much more, competition, people will come down, I guess, so. That's
And
all
we
I
hope
got.
they do. We
Yeah, I
want
hope
their
they do.
ideas. We
I think
really do
most
want
people are
their
just
ideas.
waiting for the first one to get done, and then they'll be more vocal as you get closer to the third reading.
Perfect.
maybe. So we'll see, I guess.
Thanks, Lyle.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, your vote, please, sir. Sirs. And that is approved. 7 in favor, and Catlin is opposed. 7-1.
When will the next review?
Just a minute. Ordinance number 16-005 by title, the first time tonight, which is an ordinance to add Article 12 of Sections 7-370 and through 7-381 to the Beatrice City Code regarding registration of adjoining buildings, set fees for inspections, identify exemptions, notate penalties, and outline other matters related to the adjoining buildings, and to provide for publication in pamphlet form and for an effective date of this ordinance.
It would come back on the next regular city council meeting, which would be the March 7th city council meeting.
Did you guys catch that? Lyle?
March 7th. It'll return March 7th. That'll be the next regular city council meeting. Next week we have work session. We won't take any action on it then. And then February has 5 Mondays, and so it'll be March 7th.
Next item on the agenda is item B, ordinance adding Article 11 and Section 7-350 through 7-362 to the Beatrice City Code regarding vacant buildings.
Mayor, I move that said ordinance be given number 16-006. Title therefore be approved. Said ordinance be read by number only the first time tonight.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Claybaugh, that ordinance 16-006 be read by title only the first time tonight. Discussion.
Again, just for everybody to be on the same page, this is the vacant building ordinance. This one again deals with commercial buildings and properties. Those are defined terms once again in here. If you have a vacant building, it has to be registered. There is a fee. That fee will be set by a resolution that'll come before City Council probably on the third night that we read this. That's when we'll bring the fee at the same time, just so that they come together. Then, again, upon registration, there is an inspection that's to be done annually. Once again, if you inspect it and there are no errors or flaws found in the building, violations, it'll be inspected every 3 years then. We do provide in here that if upon the initial registration, if the building needs to be rezoned for some reason, the city agrees to waive those fees. And if there are remodeling that needs to be done to the building after its initial registration, the first 90 days, the city says it'll waive those building permit fees. And so it's kind of an encouragement to hopefully get those buildings up and no longer be vacant. There are some exceptions. If your building meets one of these exceptions, it still must be registered, but you don't have to pay the fee. We talked about if there's been significant fire damage, if it's offered for sale, but it cannot be more than 25% of the assessed value. If it's for rent, we talk about being the fair market rental based upon market rental rates, or those are the exceptions that are out there. Again, we set this to go into full force and effect on July 5th, 2016. Same with the adjoining building.
Questions from the council? Dwight?
I really think this one's a bad idea. People own these buildings, they should be able to do what they want with them. I think if they need to, they should go through the same inspection process, even if they are a separate set of alone building. But I think telling someone what they can't do with their property isn't a good idea.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public? Ron? Your name and address, please.
Ron Hasley, 701 North 7th, here in Beatrice. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for your concerns on both these issues. I was able to read through them today, your ordinances. Got some good points. I see what you're trying to do. I understand it, as I am a building owner in Beatrice myself. I don't want to deal too much on the adjoining, because I think you covered all that, and I appreciate that. As far as a vacant building goes, I'm a little concerned of maybe some overreaching. I like Dwight's comment. Some of us building owners like to just simply put in a vacant building in the inventory. And if any of you have experienced anything out there in the rental part of the commercial buildings, it usually doesn't happen overnight to get a good tenant. That's something that takes quite a while. 30 or 90 days, I think, is what you gave there, before they had to have them registered. The other concern I have, and maybe somebody here can jump in and help me, I notice section 7351 on public nuisance. You just blatantly stated here, a vacant building is a nuisance. Now, and you quoted a Nebraska statute there, which I did go look up. And I've always had a problem with just calling something a nuisance. Now, I look at that Husqvarna building out there, and that's a pretty decent building out there, but that's been vacant. Is that a nuisance? I can't define it as such, and I don't know that everybody here. A brand-new building being built that sits idle, say a spec building, one of us builders want to get in and get a prospective tenant to come in town, that might not happen overnight. So it falls under a nuisance, then falls under this category. So if somebody would like to help me out on that, either give me a call or speak up. The other thing that really concerned me as I read through this draft copy, and I'm just assuming that I have the same one that you guys did, and I know, Rich, you said that it was a work in progress, and I appreciate that. And but I don't know that there's any law that gives the city the right to set a price on a building or to set rents on a building. And you clearly outline that. I mean, some of these buildings, just to say we can't exceed 25% of value of the assessed value, what if the assessors assessed it too low? Or what if we just, it's our right under contract law to ask whatever we want for a building. And if somebody wants to pay that, that's fine. The other thing is to say that we have to accept the market rent. I mean, what is that in a commercial building? I know you outlined a few things, but all that's arbitrary. And you guys all know that. There's buildings down here that you can get for a couple $100, and there's people that want a couple $1,000 for the same amount of square footage. So I think this is lawsuit waiting to happen. I really do. So we probably need to tighten up some of those areas there.
Do you have any suggestions, Ron?
Obviously, I'd like to see that whole clause taken out on the
Which one? Is
the
that?
rents and the set price. The city has a set
Are you
price.
referring
I don't
to
think.
us-
I think that's a legal issue, Stan, and I don't
Are you
think.
referring to a section here?
I think he's looking at section
7355.
Yeah, under the exceptions.
Got it.
Where you're
7356.
requiring if somebody wants an exception on their building, they have to, it sounds like they're being forced to either sell it or get a renter in it. And like I said, I think we have a right as individuals here in America just to decide what we want to do with the building. And may want to just set an inventory for a while until the right person comes along. As far as properly maintaining those buildings, you know, I am in agreement to that kind of thing. There should be a minimum standard on a vacant building, but just because it's vacant doesn't mean it's a nuisance. I mean, we've got some beautiful buildings sitting vacant here in town. The next thing I'd worry about is we also have some historical buildings here in town. And should we look at doing preservation on some of these things? Now, I will offer a suggestion, because Dan, you've asked it a couple times, if there's something else that we can do. And I think there is. I think you can go to some of these. I think there's a group out there, and they've been there for a while, of professional businessmen that would assist in taking down some of these older buildings. And instead of going this, I call it a bully tactic, and trying to force everybody.
We're not trying to, this isn't bully tactics, and we're not trying to force anything, because I don't like that conversation, okay? We're asking for the public's input, and that's why you have the opportunity to give testimony tonight, okay?
And Stan, I also have the right to speak freely.
I understand,
on
but
these
this is
meetings,
not
speak
bully
my mind.
tactics, okay?
Well, I define them as such.
All right.
And I'm entitled to that. So, and I apologize if that offends you, Stan, but you know, this, you're setting people's rents and setting people's prices on building. I don't know what else you would define that as.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron.
Ron, if I may, real quick, just on the rents and the sale, would you be less opposed if there wasn't a limit, but they were actually listed?
I'm not understanding the question.
Instead of the 25% of assessed value, just that you have it listed in some way. Here's a for rent sign. Here's,
Yeah, but why would you have to list it? I mean, what if you want to keep it? Keep it in an
just hold it as an inventoried building.
Pardon?
Just hold it as an inventoried building is
Yeah,
what you're.
inventory building. And I mean, I've got buildings that really, the ground is worth more than the buildings are. So, but they're being rented right now, so why would I want to take them down just because they go vacant for a while? See, it doesn't make much sense. So I should be able to determine that, so long as it's not a nuisance. And I have a problem with your definition of nuisance here, the way you wrote it up, is just being vacant, to me, is not a nuisance building.
Ted?
There's no need for back and forth here, Ron. The nuisance thing is a legal term. It's no different than when we have something for TIF funding and it's in a section of town that's considered blighted and substandard. Doesn't mean every structure or that piece of the whole community is blighted or substandard. It's just a legal term. And as far as the percentage is, you have to start somewhere. And as Stan said, need to go back and forth about the for instance, but a year or so ago we tried to move forward on a project that was part of our downtown redevelopment plan. I contacted Tobias, had him contact an owner of some structure, and asked him what he wanted for it. Well, he wanted 12 times what the assessed value of it is. So, I guess what you want and what is realistic are sometimes two different things. I mean, if someone, I know what my house is, my property that I own in Beatrice is worth, I can go to it's taxed at what they say market value is, and I think that that's pretty accurate. But now, if somebody comes in and wants to give me 5 times that much, I'm selling it, okay? But if I was trying to sell it, I wouldn't list it for 5 times what the market value is and expect to sell it. So we're just trying to cover that legal,
Where is that line, Ted? I mean, 5 times as much is
Well,
okay, but 12 is too much?
Well-
I mean, where do we draw that line?
we draw that line right here is what we put in the ordinance. That's where we drew the line. That's my answer. Okay?
Any other comments from anyone?
Dan?
Just a moment.
I was on the committee with this, guys, to be honest with you. And I did go back and reread this, and I think we have some problems with this. Maybe we should, I just talked to Bob there just a second ago, and maybe we should review this a little bit more, because I do have a couple of problems in here after I've after it's been finalized and I've read it. But maybe we should go back and review this. Maybe you guys can bring some stuff to us. This is what these next 3 meetings are for, is to get the input, guys. And like I said on the other one, is it perfect? No. But we are willing and open to any suggestions that you can bring to us, and we will try to fit it, to make it work, because that's what we want to do is make it work for the public and the taxpayers. So,
Rich, I did, after I received these today, I did forward them to 3 of my civil rights attorneys for review. Now, I'm sure that's going to take them a little while to get through it, and I outlined a couple of the issues that I spoke of tonight as far as city setting rents and values, and the clear definition of nuisance, and whether a vacant building fits that. So I would like a little time to get some answers too.
and that's exactly why the mayor put this into 3 separate meetings
And I could-
that's almost a month down the
Yep.
line. I mean, we could have done this all at one thing tonight, but Stan graciously put this into,
Yep.
to give you guys the time to get a hold of us and see what we can do. Because we don't want to shove this down your throat. We want to work with you guys to get something that protects you.
Phil?
On the vacant building, you know, I'm okay with the ordinance and things. One thing we might want to do, if we're going to ask them to actually register these buildings, may we put it on our website that these buildings are vacant and for rent. Maybe they don't know that Ron Hasley owns these buildings, and they could contact him. They're driving down the road, they don't know who owns the vacant building. Might give them a little carrot, you know, for registering their building.
Bob?
Yeah, we've discussed this several times, and, you know, I've kind of brought up the price issue you did. The one thing that I really want to steer clear from is that we're here to get information and fact-finding. When you bring things up like civil attorneys and those type of things, it really bothers me in this discussion.
Yeah, but they can get the facts.
Maybe so, but again, I'm one that was saying, you know, maybe a person should be able to get the building for what they want, you know? For me to set a price, I sometimes struggle with that. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Rich, did you have something else?
Phil brought up a point with the website. That was discussed in the committee meetings with building owners, and you're right, most of them did not know that is a route that we can and will go. We will, you know, put that right on the city website. I believe we talked about that.
I believe the opportunity we discussed that was brought up in the committee meetings was that, I believe through Engage, am I correct?
Engage or the chamber.
Engage or the chamber, I believe they offer commercial buildings, you can put them up on their websites now for free or a nominal price. I can't speak exactly what it is. But have that available, and then if anybody wants to, they can post it through them.
We could just put a link on ours and direct them to Engage.
So,
Okay, anything else, guys? Ron, anything else? Thank you.
Honest to God, we tried to get every facet we could get into this thing and think everything out, but we need your input.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Your vote, please, gentlemen. And that is why I get the big bucks, huh?
That's right.
I vote for it. Ordinance number 16-006 by title the first time tonight. An ordinance to add Article 11 and Sections 7-350. I'm sorry.
Votes yet, man.
We're gonna write that
Still
down.
write these down to make sure that they.
I'm sorry.
I know, you're fine. I'm just making
was
sure they
me.
don't change their votes yet.
I was cleaning off the board.
All right, I think I got them.
You got it?
You have them? Yes. You should have Party, Catlin, Morgan, and Kerr voting no? Yep. Okay.
Ordinance number 16-006 by title the first time, an ordinance to add Article 11 and Section 7-350 through 7-362 to the Beatrice City Code regarding registration of vacant buildings, set fees for inspection, identify exceptions, notate penalties, and outline other matters related to vacant buildings, and to provide for publication in pamphlet form and for an effective date of this ordinance. This will be discussed again on March 7th?
Correct.
All right. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance amending Section 4-3 of the Beatrice City Code regarding consumption in public.
Mayor, I move that said ordinance be given number 16-007, title therefore be approved, rules be suspended, and said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Billsbach, that ordinance 16-007 be read by 3 times tonight. The motion to suspend the rules are not debatable. Your vote, please. That is approved. Did somebody not change, or?
No, I changed to no.
Oh, you changed to no?
Passes 6-2.
6-2. It passes 6-2. Ordinance number 16-007 by number the first time, ordinance number 16-007 the second time, and ordinance number 16-007 the third and final time.
Mayor, I move that ordinance number 16-007 be passed and approved.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Billsbach, that ordinance number 16-007 be passed and approved. Discussion.
What this came from was when last time we had the chamber come forward, talk about Oktoberfest, and everybody seemed to be in agreement, liked the idea, the concept. Greg and I went back, started looking at city code, and there was a little confusion as to how city code was written and what it allowed and what it didn't allow. And so we sat back and said, why don't we just rewrite it so make it so it's clear. The idea is not to expand where alcohol can be consumed. It's simply to clarify what the previous ordinance stated. And so if you read through the ordinance that we have drafted here, basically it says, first off, dispensing, consumption, or use of alcoholic liquors is banned on public streets, alleys, parkways, and property owned by any governmental subdivision, which would include us. So first off, it's banned everywhere. And then we have some exceptions. The first one talks about the cabin in Chautauqua Park, which we allowed before, and we talked about the campgrounds at Chautauqua Park and Riverside. Again, you have to be renting, you have to be a guest there. You can't just stumble into one of those 2 places and have a beer. You have to actually be renting one of those locations. The second one says, again, if you're renting one of these locations with approval of the city council and you have a liquor license, you can use the Carnegie Building and the Beatrice Auditorium. We've been asked about the Carnegie Building in the past. We've had people wanting weddings there, or whether it's some art they want to put up and have a little wine while they're looking at the art. The Beatrice Auditorium, people have asked in the past about having wedding receptions there. And so that's why we spelled those 2 out. C goes into the passengers of limousines. This is a state statute item that was listed in a current ordinance. And then the fourth one basically says federal government or state government, if somebody else has a governmental subdivision, if their governing body allows it, we can't ban it on their property. So if the courthouse wanted to allow it, then the county supervisor said it was okay, it's not our jurisdiction to tell them no. Again, they have to have the liquor license and those kind of things. So we didn't expand what the current one says. We just rewrote it to make it a little more clear. We had a large argument over prepositional phrases and where commas should go, and it was exciting to watch. But that's what we did on this one.
Questions? Ted?
I don't necessarily have a question. I'm not voting against it. I went on the website and looked at the ordinance. I was here when we did this, and it was long, lengthy, painful. I would have liked to have seen, so when you put this in, I would have liked, in our packet, I would have liked to have seen the original ordinance.
Page 76.
76 was
I-
there.
Is that all of it?
Yes.
Yes.
I thought there was more of it.
That's it.
Okay. And because this is what I got when I looked on, and I did have it, but I thought that this was just an attachment to an ordinance. This was all of it.
That's all of it. That's
Okay.
all you have today.
That's all I have today. Well, I thought what we see here on page 76 was an attachment to original ordinance that we adapted this to it, and I thought there was more of it. I would have liked to have read all of it, but tell me this is it. Because I don't know when, looking at this, I don't know when we adopted this, when this was changed. And it
says it there.
Does it?
Yeah, the last time we adjusted this was when we added the limousines back in November 4th of 2013. Prior to that, there was a change in November of '09. Prior to that, December of '92.
92. Okay, that's one I couldn't find. I knew, well, yeah, I was here in 92.
Joe?
That was all. That's all I need.
All right, thanks. Joe?
The proposed deal with the Oktoberfest, where would that fall in at?
It, technically, as Tobias noted, we predominantly get requests for the Carnegie Building and sometimes also for the Municipal Auditorium. And so we listed those explicitly so that the public would know to come ask us and get city council approval. But we also fall under, and this was a discussion we had back and forth, we also fall under D, which is where we give our permission to use the public right-of-way now, alleys, things like that, when they come before you and request that under our current ordinance, and you would see that over in the other version too, that same language, it would fall under D for like Chautauqua Park and the Oktoberfest.
Wait.
I'm gonna stick to my usual vote about city property not being used, and I see adding on these two new buildings, the Carnegie Building for one. Parking there is terrible. Does that include the grounds to it too, or just the building alone?
Again, the grounds, as Greg just indicated, would fall under D. You could expand it
So you have
if you
two
wanted to.
Separate ones in,
What do you mean?
permits for this?
No, you just do one permit.
I think we had a wedding a while back that had the alcohol there, and people assumed it was all right. What's wrong with doing this?
The alcohol was in the Carnegie. It was not on the Charles Park.
Under the big tent?
It was not.
Anyway, what happens to this? We approve, say, 3 or 4 wine tasting things, and everybody gets, well, they're drinking there, why can't I drink there next weekend too, and just go in there? As far as the auditorium goes, I think that's mostly used, as far as I can tell, the biggest majority is for underage kids. I would hate to see that become an issue too, where you have kids one night and then you have adults over there drinking the next night, and
Again, that would require approval from this body before it'd be allowed in that
do it
building.
legally.
Yes.
But what happens if they say, okay, it's a kid drink, let's go to a basketball tournament, we'll just sneak in a 6-pack in our cooler and no one will care?
It could happen today too.
I know, but if you're allowing it on occasions, that's gonna be easier to think it's, oh, I can do it now if I did it last week, so. I think it's wrong.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Phil?
In 92, I don't know if Rich remembers this, how we got beat on by all the, you weren't here in 92?
No.
No, that was Wayne and Les. And all the little blue-haired ladies came up and screamed and yelled at us for, well, you know,
That's happened more than just
for
in
having
92.
alcohol in there. And we said, hey, we'll give you money to the chamber if you don't have alcohol anymore and things. And that's how they got their funding for a few years, so they didn't have beer gardens. And now we're going back to put on beer gardens in the park. I think there's going to be some people that are very upset that we passed this all in one night tonight. So, 92, I was for it, so I'll still be for the alcohol in the park because it's a good fundraiser. I think there's going to be some people very upset. This is alcohol in the park again.
Yes, sir. Rich?
You know, the cabin down at the, we haven't been able to have beer in there, but they've had it for years. I think I rented it one time and had beer down there. I'm like Dwight. I have a problem with the auditorium and the other building. One question, doesn't the state now allow in the state parks alcohol on their campsites and stuff?
I believe they
I
made
believe
that
they
change
do.
recently.
I think
All of them, I don't.
McConaughey, they don't.
There are limits on it.
There's some of them are limited, but for the most part,
And that one I don't have a problem with. If they're down there camping, they want to have a beer, I don't have a problem with that and such. But I've got a problem with the auditorium like Dwight. And
But you would still need a special use permit for that. And this body would have to give permission for that. Okay?
We haven't denied it any of them yet, I know of, in 12 years.
The other thing I would note, Rich, about your concerns about those two buildings, under your current code, they're allowed. It's with approval by this body, everything that everybody's expressed concern about is allowed today. It's buried in here, and if you read it, you can get those things out. We just try to make it a little more clear as to where it is and is not with your approval.
But I just hope, my concern is like Dwight, like I said with that cabin down there, that was never allowed except by special use, and I don't think anybody ever went and
I
got
believe that was part of the 09 revision, is when we put that one in there specifically about the cabin.
Anything else? Rick?
Oh, I just caught Chief Lang's eye there, and I just wondered if he had any input. He had a smile on his face there for a little bit.
Yeah, he's looking sharp.
He is looking sharp.
Bruce Lang, Chief of Police. Probably my only input would be that anytime you bring something in front of you all, that gives everyone the opportunity to speak directly to that event. I like to be able to keep our minds open to events in our community and judge each event on its merits. And so this ordinance kind of gives you all the final say on each event, and I think that's a good thing. Then we can get into the specifics of what's actually happening, what's the security, what's all the rules we make them play by. So for that reason, I think that puts that process in place is always something I'm in favor of.
Okay, Ted?
So, Bruce, so now that you're sitting here, you can explain to the community that there's a wholly different structure between this body giving a special use permit and us issuing or not issuing a state liquor license, because this body has voted
Absolutely.
against liquor licenses in the past, and the state has granted them. Would you share?
Well, and what Ted's talking about here is when we do liquor licenses, we're advisory, meaning that the city can advise the Liquor Control Commission what we think should happen. Carries some weight. It actually carries more weight than it used to, but it's not absolute. What we're talking about here is something that would be absolute. You could certainly look at an event, say, this isn't what I want. Dwight point well taken of, I don't believe in this particular building being used for that, so I'm going to convince my other council members and we'll vote no, that we don't like that in that building. And I'm going to give you advice on whether I think the infrastructure is conducive to criminal activity or to laws being broken, that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Chief.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments? Anybody from the audience? Okay, gentlemen, your vote, please. That is approved 7 to 1, with Councilman Party voting against. Ordinance number 16-007 has been approved. Next item on the agenda is an ordinance amending sections 16-539 through sections 16-562 of the Beatrice City Code regarding bicycle registration.
Mayor, I move that said ordinance be given number 16-008. The title therefore be approved, the rules be suspended, and said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Billsbach, that ordinance 16-008 be read by title only 3 times tonight. The rules suspended. The motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. And your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-008 by number the first time. Ordinance number 16-008 by number the second time. And ordinance number 16-008 the third and final time.
Mayor, I move that ordinance number 16-008 be passed and approved.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Cook, that ordinance number 16-008 be passed and approved. Discussion.
Again, as part of our ongoing review of just codes and resolutions and whatnot, this is several sections we found in the city code. Basically, it made it illegal to ride a bike inside the city limits that was not registered. It didn't matter if you lived in town, lived out of town. If you rode a bike in town that was not registered, it was illegal. And I don't know about you, but this is one of those things we thought we should probably decriminalize. I don't know how many times the police ever went down and arrested anybody for riding a bike without these. So what we did was we basically took these code sections. We'll still have the registration. If you want to have your bike registered, you can still come down and get registered, but now it's optional. It's still the same fee. It's still $5. Instead of it being an annual registration, we made it so it's good for the lifetime of the bike. Because really the idea of getting your bike registered is so if they find it at some point, they know to call you and say, here's your bike back. That's the whole purpose of it. Doesn't make any sense to have it registered every year. We don't go out and inspect the bikes. We don't do anything like that. So we got rid of that annual inspection report portion of it. And then again, we made it so it's no longer illegal to ride an unregistered bike in town. So if you choose not to, that's your choice.
What was the fine?
I don't know. I assumed it fell under just the general city code. Is that right, Greg?
I'm just curious. I mean, we've taken some of these out, some of these antiquated ordinances out before, and I've always found that interesting. The fine was, $1 or 50 cents or things, because some of it was written, in the 1900s, and I was just curious.
This will actually go into effect
Now,
after we approve it?
After we approve it, after it gets all the publication and everything taken care of. So, yeah, we might have to kind of hold the police off from arresting anybody in the next week or two as this thing goes through its process.
I'm
But
sorry I interrupted you. You were looking for something.
still a little cold for the.
no, I think
I believe it falls under the general, so up to a $500 fine.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Anybody from
Safety check out here on the trail.
anybody from the public? All right, gentlemen, your vote, please. And that is approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-008 has been approved. Next item is an ordinance amending section 16-495 of the Beatrice City Code regarding prohibited pedestrian crossing.
Mayor, I move that said ordinance be given number 16-009. The title therefore be approved, the rules be suspended, and said ordinance be read by number only 3 times tonight.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Party, that ordinance number 16-009 be passed, or be read by title only, read by number only, 3 times tonight. The rules suspended. A motion to suspend the rules is not debatable. Your vote, please. That is approved 8-0. Ordinance number 16-009 by number only the first time. Ordinance number 16-009 by number the second time. And ordinance number 16-009 by number only the third and final time.
Mayor, I move that ordinance number 16-009 be passed and approved.
Second.
Moved by Catlin, seconded by Party, that ordinance 16-009 be passed and approved. Discussion.
again, just another one of those, as we were going through the old city codes, we found this code section there, talks about basically it's jaywalking. And you'll see in section B, which on page 89 of your book, we laid out certain streets in downtown that you couldn't jaywalk or else it was a crime. Most of this, from my understanding, stems from back when the high school was downtown, which was 15 plus years ago, roughly. And so, again, these haven't been enforced. I don't know that the police have been out arresting anybody. I certainly know that they haven't arrested city staff, because one of the streets you can't go across is 4th Street between Market and Grant. That would be between the auditorium and the city hall. I can tell you that one gets jaywalked across quite frequently by city staff. And so, again, one of those that we're not enforcing. Let's take the criminal part out of it. We left a couple of sections still in there with regards to, hey, if you do have traffic control on both corners, you're supposed to go through the corner. And then also you're not supposed to cross diagonally through an intersection unless there's an officer there telling you to do so. But we got rid of the big chart that was in the middle there that had to deal with mostly downtown streets.
Questions?
Well, I don't know, coming to the meeting tonight, we could have collected probably about a dozen of them on 4th Street. But Richie was driving, and Richie can see real well. So.
Took them out.
Anybody from the audience? All right, gentlemen, your vote, please. And that's passed 8-0. Ordinance number 16-009 has been approved. Next item on the agenda is the public forum. Purpose of the public forum is for the presentation of an item by the general public to the City Council for consideration at a later date. No discussion or action will be taken by the City Council at this time. Is there anything for the public forum from the City Council or from the public? Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion and reports, and the first report is from the Beatrice Police Department, the 2015 annual report that you have in front of you. Chief Lang.
Mayor and Council, thank you for having the opportunity to visit with you tonight about the 2015 annual report. Probably the most trying year, certainly in the 23 years I've been here, for our department. Sometimes dumb luck falls into play, and you don't even know how lucky you were until after it's over. But when we renovated the heating and air conditioning system at the police department, that required us to relocate our communications center to the courthouse, to the backup center. And like many of you probably have in your work, you have things that you don't do very often, and so you tend to say, yeah, we do that. We can do that. That's not a problem. We had a backup center, and we thought it had all the stuff in it that we needed. Well, as we got ready to relocate for the heating and air conditioning system, we found out it didn't have a lot of the things that we needed. So we were able to do that with time on our side and all of that. So the center was in operation for a few days when we relocated for the heating and air conditioning system. Little did we know that on May 4th of 2015, we were going to be struck by lightning in such a fashion that multiple electronic vendors said they had never seen that type of destruction. And we were basically instantly out of service. The dumb luck comes in that we were able to move now to our backup center that was operational, that was functional, and was capable of being up and running within just a short period of time. So that was part of a good thing. We moved that whole operation into a room that was very small and had limited abilities, but it was still functional. We didn't really think that we were going to have a flood, and then we had a flood. And one of the other things we learned was that when we have natural disasters, there are people in our community that refuse to get their information any place other than the police dispatcher. And so the call load was, I can't even overstate how bad it was. We would send extra people up there, and literally, if they picked up the telephone, there would be someone on it, and as fast as they could hang it up, it would be ringing again for hours. And the call load was just tremendous. So we worked through that. And then we had floated the idea for the last few years of expanding our communications center because everything's getting more expensive, and we needed to look at ways that we could be more efficient. And during all of this chaos, the city of Crete came to us and said, okay, we think this is a great idea, let's do this. So we put all that in at the same time. So at the same time we're relocating our center, we've had all of our electronics destroyed, we've had a flood, and within that same 60-day period, then we began dispatching for the city of Crete. The communications people did an outstanding job of sticking with it and learning, and it's functioning well, but it was certainly was a challenge, and I just can't overstate the commitment that those folks put into it. And Carla Jones, our new 911 director, and that is working really hard to get us up to speed. And now we're in a position now where we hope to add additional jurisdictions to the center that it's up and running. We've kind of got the model figured out, and we know we can go to areas around us and save them literally, $1 million in the next 5 years. I mean, big numbers through consolidation and shared services, shared technology. So that's an exciting time for us, and exciting for as we don't really know what the future brings, but the possibilities are good. So I guess that was probably the biggest thing that hit us in 2015. In addition to that, we restarted our dog program. Our dog is old enough to go to school, and him and the trainer are in school right now. Toro is, I guess, almost 6 months old now and is doing well, and that's a different kind of a dog program. That dog will be able to come in here and visit all of you at the city council meeting and sit here, and people can pet it, and yet it can still go out and do its job of detecting narcotics and tracking down missing people and so forth without having to worry about it biting you. It might lick you a lot, but it won't bite you. So that's an Anthony Chisano has that program, and again, that's moving along really well. And then I guess the last thing I just wanted to touch on, because people have asked me about this, we've had some turnover with some expansions and different things, and we've hired different officers. And one of the places that people say, where do you get your officers? And one of the places we're getting our officers now is from the Department of Corrections. And 5 of our last 6 officers that we've hired have been from the Nebraska Department of Corrections. And they've been older individuals, not early 20s like most of ours. Some of them have been in their 30s and even 40, looking for career changes. And they've been excellent officers with maturity, and it's been a little bit of a change for us on how you train that kind of a person as well. So those are all the things that I can touch on that have been a real positive thing for us, but has at the same time been a bit of a challenge. And then I guess I'll close before I take questions. This annual report, ever since I've been here, was always put together by my secretary, but also by Dee Fritch in communications. And Dee passed away here recently, and certainly she's missed. And her hand was always. She loved this report. She loved doing it. You know, how somebody gets this is their thing. Well, the annual report was her thing. So we'll miss her, and we miss her contributions to it. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody might have.
Any questions, gentlemen?
I don't have a question, Bruce. I was just impressed that you noted that you had a flood, and in the next sentence you said you floated that idea in there. So that was clever. I appreciated that.
Or the jacket.
Yeah.
I got the whole deal going tonight.
Thought about that a long time, didn't he?
Yeah. He must have said it back at the office and practiced that all morning. So.
Any questions, gentlemen? Anyone from the public? Thanks for the report, Chief. Appreciate it. Okay, next item on the agenda is a legislative update.
Again, just want to update you on a few things. Last time we talked about LB 958. This was a legislative bill that the governor had Senator Glore put in for him, dealing with the levy and the limits and all those things that Linda Cook came to talk to you about last time. She went to that hearing. If you followed it along, it went for many, many hours into the evening. But since then, no action's been taken. The committee hasn't taken a vote on it one way or the other. And so but we did send a letter up. Linda did go up and was there as part of it. She didn't testify, but she was present. The other one we talked about last time was LB 1042. This is the one that had to do with TIF and getting county approval. We sent a letter in opposition. They had their hearing. The committee did. Again, I haven't seen anything where the committee's taken action one way or the other on that one. The other one I wanted to kind of note to you is LB 295. This was from Senator Scheer. It requires the city to receive approval from the county board before we enforce our nuisance or building codes out in our extraterritorial jurisdiction, so in our first 2 miles. And initially, the city of Omaha came in and opposed it. There was an amendment then made that cut out any town that was in a county of larger than, I think, 100,000 people. And so Lincoln and Omaha then immediately became no longer opposed to the bill, and it went to the select file. So we'll have to kind of watch and see what happens. I kind of got the feeling this one's going to move forward. And then there are some other exceptions in there. We'll have to see whether or not we fit into one. I talked about a joint zoning board and some of those things, but otherwise, we may have to go get county approval to enforce our city codes in our zoning jurisdiction.
Would we fall into the same category as Lincoln? I mean, I understand Omaha because their bubble, everything that surrounds them is another community.
Right. Nope.
But we're in the why aren't we in the same?
Because Lincoln's in Lancaster County, which the only exception they have so far is the 100,000 people in the county. So that takes out 2 counties.
I apologize.
That are exempt.
I was thinking out loud there.
Rather than just saying municipal or 3 counties? Sarpy County, yeah, you'd be right. Sarpy County would be the other one.
Douglas, and Lancaster. Yeah.
So rather than just saying it's just first, second, and third class cities and then villages, they do it the opposite way. And
okay, I understand that.
so that's what's going on in the legislature. Other than that, any questions you have about certain bills? If not, we'll get you information if we don't know them. Okay.
And your report.
Monthly reports in your packet again. Happy to answer any questions. A few things we want to point out. We did have a basketball tournament at the city auditorium. We had a group come down from Lincoln. They're actually it's a tournament of homeschool kids. They get together. They had a basketball tournament. You see, we had 8 teams that came down and participated. One of them liked it so much they want to make the auditorium their home venue. And so they're talking to Mr. Peathot about schedules and coming down and making it their home venue. They liked it down here rather than playing up in Lincoln. For the skate park, if you'll see, the equipment has been ordered. It's set to arrive right now, tentatively in 1 week, and then be erected over the next couple days, which should be done hopefully within the next 2 weeks. It should be on-site and erected, completed before March 1st. That's assuming everything goes according to plan.
Our boys doing that or?
We are having the other group come up and help us put everything together. And so our guys will help, but they'll be having help do it as well. 6th Industrial Row, we had Induar, we got their comments back from our design. Engineering's staff is looking at those comments right now, and we're responding back to them. There weren't anything major in there, so it's just a few little tweaks here and there as we get that project ready to be presented to you.
And when does that start? Or when do you plan to have that started?
I believe he's hoping for probably early summer, midsummer construction time. So once James gets the final design done, we'll put it out for bid, and then look to see what bids we get back. Whether it's summer, late summer, somewhere in there is probably what we're looking at for.
I got one other question.
Yeah.
On page 116, and I think it's probably under properties, development of nursery, purchase additional trees. Can you get me something, how many trees we have on hand, how many we actually plant? I don't think we plant enough, is my point, and I'd like to be able to, I want to, somewhere here in the future here, I'd like to see us expand our program, and I've got a couple ideas on that, and so can you?
I can get some information. I'll talk to Mr. Pethos, see what he's got. I know that he received a grant, I think last year, and we planted 50 trees around. It sounds like a lot until you realize how much space we have, and then you realize that it's not that many once you start spreading them out. But I'll see what I can find for you.
Yeah, just shoot me an email or something.
Okay.
I think that's something that we as a body need to address here, so.
Okay. The 2nd Street Museum came up last meeting. We have received approval from the railroad. So we did get that written approval. In fact, we got it last Tuesday, just after the meeting. So we do have that in hand. And then street lights, if anybody's noticed, Pat and his boys have been busy putting the street lights up around town. They have 72 of them installed. They're east of Court Street, south, and then they're south of Court, and they're east of 6th Street. So kind of in that portion of town where they're putting them up this year.
And they're trimming the branches back away from them at the same time?
Yep, while they're up there, try just getting it all done. And
Okay. Anything else? Any questions of Tobias? Anyone from the audience? All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next regular scheduled city council meeting is on March the 7th, and we will have a work session next Monday, February 26th in these quarters. With that, Mr. Catlin,
Mayor, I
entertain a
move
motion to
that
go
the-
into executive session.
I move that the Beatrice City Council go in closed session at 8:22 PM for the protection of public interest to discuss contract negotiations.
Second.
Been moved by Catlin, seconded by Billsbach, that we go into executive session at 8:22 PM. Your vote, please. That is approved 8-0.